Escaping the Fold by Vincent Merkel. The Shield. I walked towards the door. Zeus growled lightly at me and went to a column adorned with weapons and levers. I donned my lion skin and then added my quiver, spear, and sling. I wrapped my head in a crude leather helmet and fit an arrow to my bowstring. With my free hand, I patted the blade on my side, looked up at the massive column, selected a lever, and pulled it halfway down. I held it there for a moment until a mechanism engaged. I safely walked out through the antechamber and into the breaking morning light. The massive stone slabs in the antechamber and outside door openings closed behind us as Zeus and I exited the dome. With the storm over, we hiked to the ridge. The fierce and loyal thylacines surrounded us at a distance, checking the brush and trails for any foreign spoor detected by their extraordinarily keen senses to alert us to the possibility of intruders on our side of the island. I quickly located Alexandra and joined her in a small clearing. She bolstered my hope for escape from Teleonisi.
On the other side of the island is the Theodoro, the boat that my family was sailing.
Alexandra looked at me as she held my arm to keep me from walking.
It is in a protected cove, lodged on a rock. It is where we wrecked, and it is well above the waterline. My father saved all of the flotsam he could find to patch the hole in the hull. There are more planks in your cove below the ridge. I have the tools, and we have the materials. You have the skill. I have kept all of the ropes and the sails out of the sun all of these years. Let us fix the ship and sail to Deuteronisi.
She hesitated from her excitement for just a moment and added,
Let us go and send a signal now to the Kalans that we are going to fix the boat and sail to them.
Yes, I answered, but what about Linnea? I have been reading the inscriptions on your walls. They are instructions on how to trap the beast. If we fix the Theodoro, he will just wreck it again as easily as he destroyed it the first time, and as easily as he sank the Tilly. I mused. The beast has power, but like any devil, he can be trapped, and I'm beginning to see how in the drawings on your walls. As I finished speaking, we reached our destination.
You saw what?
Alexandra asked as she cast a doubtful gaze over the shores of my former domicile below the great granite wall. Her quadruped friends, Mickey and Odysseus, were sniffing at a stone slab and barking out a strange warning, while the largest of the thylacines began to growl ferociously at a distant twig in the woods. My hostess looked at Mickey, who lightly touched his paw to a human footprint by a granite slab in the rain-soaked mud. The stone was supposed to be hiding the shield and tripod that Alexandra had stashed in a crevice on the ridge. A glint in the distant forest suggested that someone was walking through the trails and holding something large and reflective. Over the years of spying on the Malak men, Alexandra had learned their language and understood their malevolently cruel nature, but she also knew that for the most part they were dim-witted, superstitious, and lazy, and, being the clever girl that she was, had no problems in fooling them into thinking that she was a supernatural goddess spirit of the jungle. Sometimes she even believed it herself. Alexandra might have forgotten that I stood paces away from her when she raised her arms and quietly spoke in the direction of the running thief.
You have angered the goddess of the forest, and you will pay.
She turned to me and warned me to get down.
They have found the shield. We can only hope to get it back before the Babula learns of it. The Malaks do not travel alone. There will be a party of at least 4 of them, but they could have 20 waiting over the hill.
With a perplexed look, I asked her, "Goddess of the forest?" The livid woman composed herself and spoke calmly.
I have an image to uphold.
With nostrils flaring, the fierce girl turned to her beloved Tasmanian tigers and issued forth a command that I can only guess the meaning of. As we followed Tasmanian tigers that stalked the small hunting party of Malaks, Alexandra garbled out syllables unknown to man, but cherished by rabid raccoons, I am sure. The Malaks had a very good lead on us, so there was no way to know how many would be encamped on this side of the island. Alexandra disappeared into the underbrush, crouched behind some reeds and grasses, and pulled me to the ground.
They have jumped the ridge, and it is too quiet,
she warned.
I am not ready to fight them. We must go back and get my armor and weapons. They must not see me like this. If the Malaks lose fear of their superstitions, they will not relent until we are dead. Right now, I am but a fairy tale they tell their children. They fear me. They fear this ground.
Alexandra continued in hushed tones.
Occasionally they have seen me, and every few years they lead parties to try to capture me. I make sure that the leaders of those parties and their followers do not live to tell their tales.
Alexandra looked over the bushy foliage that was hiding us and called out to her pets. She put her fingers on my mouth to hush me and urged me to listen. 3 chirps from Mickey indicated Malak warriors to the west. A few chirps from Odysseus to the east indicated sentries on our flank, and another sound from Zeus gave away the position of the savages' encampment further down the hillside. "There are 2 warriors between you and home," I said. "I will stealthily go to the west, and with the help of your puppies, I can create a diversion there. They did not see us, so go when you get my signal. If they decide to run away, I will slow them down." The child in Alexandra answered me.
No, Thomas, I cannot let you do it. You do not know these people. They are cunning and brutal. If they catch you, they will show no mercy, and you will be tied to the post and meet Kaukaka and your doom.
I smiled at Alexandra as I turned and started my crawl to the west. They do not know me, Alexandra. My weakness is a beautiful woman and a few savory vices, not the Malaks. Go, Queen of the Thylacines, put on your battle gear and we will recover the shield and erase their memories from this part of the island. Then we will set a trap for Babula and escape to Deuteronomy. Wait for my signal." I nodded to her as an indication of agreement with the plan. Alexandra asked,
But how will I know your signal?
I pointed to the Malaks loitering to the west. "I will create a distraction. You will know it. Just wait for the sentries on the east. When they start running, you will have a free path."
But
Alexandra objected. I spoke sternly to her, more so than I would have under any other circumstance. "You are wasting time, Alexandra." She demurred with a call to her beasts and left me in the weeds. I began my crawl down the hill against a root-lined creek bed that had dried many ages ago. I called to Mickey and Odysseus and tried to convey my plan to them, but struggled with which language to use. It could be that I am a genius in the ways of communications, or it could be that Alexandra's beasts had extraordinary intelligence. Either way, The wily creatures did my bidding. They went ahead of me. I found a dark nook in the edge of the bank that put me at eye level with the 3 Malak warriors to the west, who were breaking for a snack of dried meat. I shuddered when I realized that they were indeed cannibals, feeding on the remains of some poor soul. The 2 thylacines sat stoically on either side of me, watching the 3 painted men. In hushed tones, I spoke to my furry friends. "Hey, you too, do you have any clue of what it means to use trickery?" I wove some leaves into my leather skull cap, lifted my head, and called out to Zeus. A quip in the language of the tree frog seemed to work, as Zeus was soon by my side. One of the 3 savages got up and walked down the hill. He spoke in a loud voice that was answered by the voices of those farther away in the encampment. The thief carried the shield with him and disappeared into the jungle. Another of the remaining warriors loudly belched, rubbed his belly, and ran his hand over his sweaty forehead. He pointed a few degrees to the west of my vantage point and hollered, "O Webla Galuba Bagaluba Obedobe!" His compatriot answered him with jeers and laughter as he threw the bones of a gnawed forearm carelessly into the brush. The warrior continued to rub his belly and stumbled through the bush just a few yards from where the thylacines and I hid. I tapped Mickey on the shoulder and pointed to the laughing warrior. I showed Mickey my spear and bid him to steal the one that the careless warrior had leaned on a log. Mickey did his part unseen by the unsuspecting Malak. I crawled behind the savage who had just squatted over a branch to relieve himself after his dastardly meal. I grabbed Zeus and Odysseus forcefully by the loose skin on their necks, and they turned to me in unison, bearing ferocious canines and a deep desire to rend flesh. "Good," I encouraged them. I then let out a blood-curdling scream that one might expect from the prey of an attacking mountain lion as I pulled the unsuspecting warrior into the teeth of the thylacines and hid in the camouflage of my lion skin. I growled loudly and barked insane orders to the tawny beasts, who followed my plan and created such a ruckus that the on-looking warrior fell back to find his spear missing. The wolf-like beasts tore at the downed man, who screamed from the pain of the ripping jaws. The sentry began to yell for backup, and mayhem ensued. Mickey went after him, but stayed clear of the knobstick that the savage swung wildly. Alexandra's 4-legged pets became loud and unruly messengers of death. Zeus ran, jumped, and took a standing warrior by the neck. His powerful jaws stifled the last breath from the skinny and feathered savage Malak. With a crunching noise, the man's pathetic body fell limp to the earth. The gods from the east came running to the frantic pleas of their 2 comrades, and they witnessed the sight of the 3 fearsome tiger-striped thylacines. From the underbrush, I could see, by the time the 2 swift-footed warriors arrived, the 2 victims of Alexandra's beasts were dead. In the language of the mad raccoon, I called to the dogs to disperse and disappear, and just as quickly as the mayhem had started, it ended. The thylacines chirped and yipped as they trotted away from the scene of carnage. A total of 5 warriors showed up to their mates' distress calls. The 2 fighters who had come from the east stretched their arms and pointed to where the yipping animals had vanished. I assumed from their demeanor and hand motions that they were relaying what they had seen to the 3 gods who had trudged up from the encampment. It was the first time that I had witnessed a Malak in person, even though I refer to the people of that tribe as men. As I gazed upon their misshapen skulls and bodies, I realized that they were like no men I had ever witnessed before. They were inhuman. One native went to cut a piece of meat from his former comrade's corpse when the others present spat upon the deceased and turned apprehensively to rejoin their hunting party further down the hill. When Alexandra heard the commotion, she ran swiftly through the wilderness, swung from a few vines in the trees, and entered her domicile from the oculus at the top of the famous granite chimney above her home. She chose her battle regalia quickly and selected a black leather sheath to hang from her waist. Inside the receptacle was a long sword of a forgotten metal folded 1,001 times over the hearth and bathed in oil. She carried a long, sleek shield made of hides stretched over contoured wood. The diverse safeguard was ergonomic enough to allow her to run through the wilderness unhindered and provided for deceptive cover and a solid barrier. That would come in handy for when she wanted her blindingly bright body armor to remain hidden. She shone very brightly when she wanted to. I had moved in my vantage point to do some reconnaissance on the Malak men. The 3 thylacines stood guard 100 paces on either side of and in back of me. I have never witnessed such dedicated guardians. I began to believe that they were telepathic, as they moved in unison without verbal communications. I waited to tell Alexandra what I had seen and heard. While listening to the tribesmen debate amongst each other, I tried to memorize what they were saying, but I didn't know the Malak language yet. My mind flashed back to when I had found the crate of supplies washed up on my dismal beach. I had found paper, written a note, and stapled it to the door of my apartment in the little cove. I had walked the jungle trails with a pen and some paper in hopes that someone would find my message stapled to a tree and save me from Teleonisi. I had folded about 15 pieces of paper and used them to fill the space in my machete scabbard, and I had stuffed the pen in there as well. The Malaks were in a deep discussion. With great excitement, I pulled the knife from its sheath, withdrew the paper, and found the pen in the scabbard. I listened and wrote. I didn't know what I was writing, but I wrote what I heard and knew Alexandra would understand what the thieves were talking about. As it turned out, Alexandra was very pleased. She had snuck up on me to see what I had captured on paper. She was as stealthy as a cat. I did not know she was there, and she startled me when she spoke in a hushed tone over my left ear. I was on my belly, propped on my elbows. The sound of her voice was magical. I was sure of it because when she whispered to me, my unaware body reacted, and for a fraction of a second, I believe that I levitated.
They are friends of Omuela and adversaries with the chieftain's son.
Her voice was unhurried as she read my scribbles.
They were sent on a mission by Kaukaka, the witch doctor. They planted their crops late and are in search of food and medicine. They feel they can carry the favor of Chief Malak with the shield. They believe it belongs to a god.
A twig broke to the west of the knoll we laid upon, and one of the more frightened Malaks jumped at the sound and urged his comrades to listen. I whispered. I counted 10 Malaks. Before I got the pen out, they had all agreed on the word, Abagale Gan. Alexandra grabbed me by my cheeks with one hand and looked at me with fierce eyes.
Did they say Abagalegan or Agabalegan?
My lips were pursed by her grip, and I tried to answer, Abagale Gan. but it came out as something else because of her squeezing hand. Gone,
Which was it?
she demanded. I gently took her hand from my mouth. I don't remember. What difference does it make? Alexandra explained the subtleties of the Malak language to me.
The difference is that if the tribe members chant Abagalegan, they have chosen a new leader. Agabalegan means that they have their prey surrounded.
I pointed to a warrior who was holding the shield. He is the new commander. I flipped through the 4 pages of notes I had taken. After they chose him, he said this. Alexandra translated his words.
If this is a shield of a god, then it will protect whoever holds it. Therefore, I am chosen. Babula sent the 4-legged creatures to take away our weakness. 2 lazy warriors are dead. Babula is testing us. Only the strong will make it back. Kaukaka and Chief Malak will give us great power for this treasure. Leave your tents behind, the rains are gone. Ready your spears and shields. It will be a 3-day march if we are tested by the demon dogs of the gods.
Just as Alexandra finished reading the text, the new commander began barking out orders to his platoon. They quickly made a formation and began the march back to their village with a rebellious shout of unification and defiance to the forest and any onlookers. The 10 Malak warriors did what is called a feather march for the next 9 miles, unaware that they were being flanked and escorted for the first third of their trek. The march was an ever-ready retreat procedure, slowed by the Malak's paranoid perception of danger. Their eyes and ears vigilantly searched the forest while spears prodded from behind painted leather shields. They shouted almost in unison at every twig that snapped for the first 2 miles. Their new leader, who was in the middle of the group, urged them on as they marched. They were right to worry. To the west, I positioned myself to keep account of the tribe's movement, and to the east, Alexandra commanded her creatures and intercepted their plans. By the time that night had fallen, Alexandra and I had found perches in trees high above the ground. Down below, the savages had built fires to ward off the predatory creatures of the night. 5 of the 10 tired travelers slept clutching their weapons around the blaze. Alexandra called out like a night bird from her lofty branch. Her minions positioned themselves for frolic around the tight encampment. 2 of the sentries dozed off, one of whom snored loudly. I let loose a flint-tipped arrow that struck one of the guards in the throat, just as Odysseus hurtled over the crackling fire.